Let's record.
Yeah.
Leave it.
I think we better this way. Leave it this way?
Yes, leave it that way.
Okay. I might as well start it.
Snow 82, Snow 8. Oh, there you
Oh.
go. Okay. Tharinda's coming in. Okay, awesome. All right, I better check with Okay, here we go. Let me just send an email to Duff. Send it. Sorry, Tharinda. I'm still sorting out.
Oh, good. I'm just fixing my hair.
Good.
Nervous. I
Can you
tell.
hear me? I'm not.
Yes.
No, you're looking fine. Yeah, it's good.
Very calm.
Good. Okay. Yeah, stay calm. Stay calm. That's the thing. Just power through it. Don't worry.
Because at the end of the day, it's not about me, right? It's,
Exactly. That's it. It's not about you. It's all about the professor.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear what he has to say about the case, but
my only thing is I want to make the most of it and get the most out of him, and I don't know enough to kind of draw or drill in, right?
all right. Well, maybe Duff can give us a bit of a pointer. Hello.
Hello, you're on mute.
Harry,
You're
You're on mute there.
He's on mute. All right, I've got to unmute him. There we go. You got to unmute yourself first, Doctor.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, thank you. I was pressing the wrong link and I couldn't find the right link. Duff came to the rescue, and then I think Jeffrey, you came to the rescue as well with the link. I appreciate it.
No, and I
So,
appreciate
Tharinda,
you.
you're the master of ceremonies.
Yeah, it's not about me, Doctor. It's about you. I'm just here to try and get the conversation going.
Well, you know, in a way, the facilitator or the enabler or the compare is the fulcrum of the presentation, and I'm just at one end of the seesaw. You keep it all together.
I'll try my best.
So you had a few questions, Tharinda. You want
Yeah,
to
I
ask
do,
the professor
I do. Just
before we get
so-
started? Yeah.
I guess I still don't know your name, Doctor.
Oh, well, you know, we try not to be too narcissistic or egotistical or self-centered, but a name is not something that I decided for myself. My parents gave it to me, so in homage to them. So Harold Dickolas is my name. Good Greek
Harry.
name.
Harry to us who know him.
Oh, Harry. Not Harry, but Harry.
Harry.
That's what I said, Harry.
Harry.
Okay, and I understand that you're still a professor at Harvard.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Next stop, Emeritus.
Sorry.
Next stop, Emeritus. But at the moment, I still have to work. Yeah.
Isn't it really early in the morning at the moment?
It is. But I owe Duff Watkins a really big favor because 30 years ago, he saw me walking out of a brothel, and he's kept the secret ever since.
As I was walking in, yeah.
He may have been working there.
That's hilarious. And the other question I had was, you worked at McKinsey.
That's right. That's
How
right.
many years was that for?
14.
14. Okay.
So I worked in New York, in San Francisco, and ultimately in Boston.
Don't you have to be smart to work there?
It's our secret, though.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to be a good actor.
Mm-hmm.
And you're based in Sydney, Australia?
That's correct.
And
Are
your
you in
client-
Massachusetts?
Yeah.
Okay. Isn't
What
it
time
like
Cambridge,
3 a.m.?
Boston. Sorry?
Isn't
What
it like
time is it
3
over
a.m.
there?
at the moment?
It is like 3 a.m. at the moment. But I have a much more important call in just over an hour to Tokyo,
Right.
so I thought this would wake me up. This
I'm
is like,
doing well with all the questions.
Thanks for
coming
putting
in.
on a suit for us.
Yeah, we appreciate all the sartorial efforts you went to. Are you going to a dogfight afterwards, perhaps?
well,
Oh, wait. Oh, no, wait. I forgot. I don't have a tie on.
Duff, you've always been a snappy dresser. That's impressive.
So before the rest of them people jump on, can we just quickly cover off some housekeeping rules, Professor? So I understand that we are not to talk about the lawsuit at all?
No, talk about it. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Why would you not talk about it? Yeah.
Oh, well, just out of respect to you, sir.
No. We're trying to discover the truth.
Okay.
So have no
Were
fear.
you for the Asians or for Harvard?
What are you asking? Are you racist?
Wow, that's an extremely good question.
Well, some of
lots
my
of
best
ways
friends are Harvard graduates. I don't understand what the issue is.
We want Harvard to continue to graduate the best and the brightest. And one of the easiest way of doing that is to attract the best and the brightest into our ranks. But that assumes we add no value during the time that people are here. But I think that diversity has its limits, inclusion has its limits. And if you end up having a pie chart with representatives of every minority group, then that will be your outcome rather than Nobel Prize winners and MacArthur awardees and so on. So I think that people need to have some merit, and perhaps not having your ethnicity, your place of birth, your religion, and so on, maybe your gender and your sexual preference on your application, will get a better result. But this is not a popular view at Harvard.
What exactly is your personal view?
That is my well, if I am sick and I
In
go
English,
to a hospital and I want someone to operate on me, I don't necessarily want someone who got in because there was a quota that needed to be filled. I want the person who knows what the heck they're doing.
That's true.
Yeah. What do you reckon, Duff?
I
you're
think
in
that's
the
pretty
next
funny.
grade. What do you
That's what
reckon?
I think.
We can't see you, Washington. You're black.
Yeah, my camera is warming up. So,
Oh, right.
That
Okay.
would get him into Harvard.
I'll be
Yeah.
there.
Oh.
I'm already in Harvard.
Can
man.
I remind you,
No, I'm
Tharinda?
already in Harvard. Too.
You're being recorded, Tharinda.
You can crop that out.
Yeah, but Tharinda, for you reference, I'm
We'll
already in
keep
Harvard.
it in. It's
I
funny.
have,
Wait a second.
That
If
info-
Washington's camera has to warm up, then Jeff can never make fun again about my Cold War technology. Because Washington has a steam-driven camera. Frankie, you made me get this $200. Okay,
Really?
Frankie scares me, so I got a $200 camera. So everything's right, Frankie. We're sweet,
That's
right?
good.
There's a Harvard qualification for every budget.
very much, yes. Very
Yeah, that's true.
Welcome
That's
to the 21st century, right?
Mhm.
You could do leadership in challenging times.
Mm.
Here's your certificate. Come for 5 days and give us a large amount of money.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight's webinar, Maintaining Relevance of Management Skills During a Prolonged Crisis. I'm Tharinda, and I will be the moderator for tonight's event. But before we start, a quick introduction to Professional Development Forum, or PDF. PDF was established to help diverse young professionals reach their full potential in modern Australian workplace. We believe that everyone, not just the elite few, should have access to the knowledge, mindset, and networks to develop themselves. We believe that by becoming the best versions of ourselves, we lead a happier, more fulfilling life and inspire those around us to do the same. We do this by running events that aim to inform, connect, and inspire, and by sharing what we learned with our community. Now, just a few housekeeping rules. We encourage everyone to please turn on your webcams so we can connect with each other. Feel free to also leave your LinkedIn details in the chat box so you can add each other after the event. If you have any questions at any time throughout the session, or you'd like to comment on anything that was said, feel free to type it in the chat box. You are invited to ask your questions at any time during the event or during the Q&A. Please note that this session will be recorded and it may be shared on social media. Tonight, we're very lucky to have a very special guest joining us from Massachusetts as our speaker, Dr. Harold Dickless. My apologies, Doctor. Harold has expertise in professional development across all levels of workplace and is currently a professor at the Harvard Business School. Prior to his tenure with Harvard Business School, he was a management consultant at McKinsey for over 14 years. He holds a PhD in psychology from Yale and lectures organizational behavior to MBA and executive short course students. So without further ado, I will hand over to Dr. Harold.
Well, thank you, Franz, and thank you, Tharinda. I'm pleased to know that the technology is as imperfect in Australia as it is in the United States. So my topic is about managing and leading in these challenging times, and I'm happy to take questions towards the end, and that will of course form part of the whole experience. So if you feel desperate to ask a question before I get to the end, that is fine too. I'm sure that many of you have been subject to business school experience and to the Socratic method of interrogation of the presenter, and I don't stand on ceremony. So do not hesitate to interrupt if something seems outrageously ridiculous. That could just be my accent or dialect. I'm pleased to see my old friend and also my longtime friend, Dr. Duff Watkins here. And despite the fact that he has a different religion to me, he's from Yale. I do respect him, and I'm here in no small part because of his influence. So hello, Duff. So in the Harvard Business School, we are like every post-secondary, tertiary education institution in the U.S. We are doing a hybrid combination of in-person and online, and students are asking all the time about how does leadership display itself now? Is leadership different during the pandemic? Is this like a war? Is this like another virus, like AIDS, like tuberculosis, like the Spanish flu, like the plague? Is this like the Great Depression of the 1930s? What models should we be referring to? Who are the great leaders from those eras? Or are we in uncharted territory? The answer is, of course, both. There's never been a pandemic exactly like this. There's never been a virus exactly like this. But we've also, by definition, never had better science, better technology, better ways of contact tracing people who may have been affected or possibly infected with the virus. We've never had a better opportunity to produce an antidote, a vaccine, and we've never had, on the other hand, a world full of foolish conspiracy theories, of mad leaders. I think of Boris Johnson, I think of Donald Trump. These are not conventional leaders. They would not exhibit successful business school training, although of course they do exhibit leadership traits that someone like Dr. Watkins would be able to analyze and presumably cull from any list of candidates he put forward to a credible hirer. So you can see some of my prejudices coming to the fore, and that is fine because we are prima inter pares. I'm just first amongst equals, and we're talking off the record by way of Chatham House rules. So that is, you can talk about what I'm saying, and you can quote what I'm saying, and you can, it's in the public domain. You just can't say that I said it. Yeah. So, hello, Miguel, and welcome to the presentation. I'm Harry, and I'm from Harvard, and I'm here to help. So we've just had a beginning. There's going to be questions at the end. Well, there's an opportunity for questions at the end. I assume there are going to be questions at the end. I'll certainly be prepared to do my part, but don't feel under any pressure. So the way at Harvard we like to look at the world is through certainly the Harvard Business School, because as you know, there are many Harvard graduate schools, and there's the undergraduate college. So, I don't talk for the Graduate School of Dentistry or the Graduate School of Public Health or the Graduate School of Law or the Kennedy School of Government or the Graduate School of Divinity and so on. So there's a dozen graduate schools, and then there's the undergraduate college. It's a patchwork of tubs, and every tub's on its own bottom. So the Graduate School of Education is the poorest. We don't care. Or the Graduate School of Business Administration. We have the most money. We don't give any of it to the Graduate School of Education. Let them figure it out. Every tub on its own bottom. That's our philosophy. So some of us are more, what can I say, socialist. Some of us are more capitalist. Some of us are more Democrat. Some of us are more Republican. So at the Harvard Business School, we train people to rule the world, to work in business, to work in their own organizations, to work for other people, to work in government, to work in the nonprofit sector. And we have alumni in all those sectors, three broad sectors of society: for-profit, government, and nonprofit. And one of the things we offer our graduates is access to that alumni. The same as Yale provides access to Duff, to all the influential alumni from Yale. Unfortunately, there are none of them in Australia, but nonetheless, he has access to them, should he so wish to travel abroad, and when he's allowed to travel abroad. And I suppose he can talk to those influential Yale graduates in some remote context, like on this Zoom. So we teach people the essence of management, which is planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. We teach them the functions of management: finance, operations and production management, marketing. We teach them strategy, and we teach them a little bit of ethics, although we don't get too carried away with ethics, because we think that people should be ethical, and it's not really up to us to teach them ethics because we're not the School of Divinity. So my particular area is leadership, and there are a number of views on leadership. And you can see leaders throughout history that you might think are good leaders or strong leaders or facilitating leaders. You might think of Gandhi, you might think of Hitler as opposing types of leaders. But in their time, lots of people followed them. For good in Gandhi's case and for very bad in Hitler's case. So being a leader doesn't mean that you are a good person. So you don't come to the Harvard Business School to be a good person. I am very interested, I have a great hobby in school mottos. So Harvard's motto is Veritas, which means truth. And I joke that within Harvard, the various faculties have their own sub-mottos. The Kennedy School, Vanitas, for vanity, and the business school, Lucratas, for filthy lucre. We try and shape our MBA students, who are the majority of the people who pass through here. Some of them end up in jail, unfortunately. And some of the faculty just use the position to make their own fortune as consultants. Since Porter made so much money as a consultant, we've had to put a cap of $1 million a year in addition to your faculty income. You can't earn more than $1 million a year as a consultant whilst at Harvard, which seems reasonably reasonable. Some people decide that they can't afford to stay on as professors because that's not enough to form their house. Can't afford their house in the Hamptons, and summers in Europe, and so on. So we have a particular philosophy, and it's a way of looking at the world through systems thinking, and we use thinking systems to help with systems thinking, and systems thinking in turn has helped us create a thinking system. So we have a number of inputs that go into the thinking system that is the Harvard Business School, and the first of those is people. And each person comes with some money because it costs a bit. So there's human resources, and then there's financial resources. Then there's the physical resources of the property, plant, equipment, the buildings, the land, the whole tangible infrastructure.
And Harold, just to quickly ask you, in terms of maintaining relevance of management skills, how would one go about doing that, especially during a time like this, during COVID?
I'm glad you asked that, Tharinda. When there is pressure on these resources, there's pressure on people. That is the supply of human resources during a pandemic, which sort of is part of the pipeline, if you like, of assets, human resources, physical resources, financial resources, natural resources. Time is the ultimate finite resource. And in a way, the system itself is part of its own input, like the snake in ancient Egyptian philosophy, the Urubus that swallowed its own tail. The system is in fact part of its own input. And what we like to do at the business school when we're talking about managing in the pandemic is we input those inputs as input, and then as throughput, transform them into output.
And if it was, I guess, if you're planning on giving someone advice, especially our audience that are watching at the moment, what would you say would help them?
Wow, that's an extremely good question as well. I would say be confident in what you have to offer. You've got training, you've got experience, you've got contacts, you've got ideas, and without you, the system falls apart. So you need to emphasize your individuality, but also your role as part of the system. So the internal team and the external team. And values are very important too. Values circumscribe and inform the vision of your organization.
And is there anything practical someone could do to maintain and help?
Well, certainly, if you bill early, pay late, buy low, sell high, and remember cash is king. I think that's very important. They're the three tenets that we try and teach our students at the Harvard Business School. Cash is more and more important these days. We don't know how long the banks will last. And where to put the cash, that's a real problem, but that's for another topic. But practically, people are valuable assets, and you've got to know that you are. An organization cannot exist without people.
So in an example where someone is not in a job at the moment, how can they upskill? How can they maintain relevance in management or their management skills?
Well, you could do an online course and just get a 2020 credential in something to do with technology, especially online communication, to show that you are up to speed. It's a retread might be in order, perhaps. So the expense of these courses is a worthwhile investment. You can choose one that fits within your budget. It doesn't have to be Harvard. It could be Yale, and there are also other schools, I believe, that do online courses, perhaps even in Australia. Get in touch with your contacts. It's very important to maintain your network. So your network might be partly people who you met at college or university, or even earlier. You may have contacts from high school, and then you may have contacts from your community groups, whether they be religious or political, so there's a difference between those two. Or it may be some other special interest groups, such as such as PDF. Any group is really crucial. It could be a general alumni association or a general graduate association that you belong to. It could be Rotary or Lions or Apex, one of the service clubs, or it could be a sporting club. But if you let people know, which you can do easily on LinkedIn and so on, that you are, through no fault of your own and no preference of your own, between jobs, looking for work, I think that's be out there. Don't say that you're working in your own consultancy, that you're John Smith or Mary Jones and Associates. No one believes that.
And Rob has a question. I think everyone just feel free to ask questions when they feel like it. Rob, if you wanted to go ahead and ask.
Yeah, thanks, Tharinda. Hi, Professor. My question is probably more angled to those who are currently in employment and find themselves working remotely. So it's quite common these days, especially in the Australian market. We hear about people now working remotely due to COVID restrictions. And my question is, do you find that it's more difficult to build the human capital and these working relationships now that people aren't face to face in the office? And do you have any suggestions on how to overcome that challenge?
Sure. I think if you have a dog or a cat or a baby, make sure that they're on camera. It humanizes people. I think especially with a baby, if you could change, diapers on camera, then people know that you're quite happy to get your hands dirty and roll your sleeves up, and that you're part of the human race. Also that you're kind of feminist, which is a good thing. And I'm sure with the HR department, that would go a really long way. And certainly during job interviews, yes, I agree that you have to sanitize. Thank you, Dr. Watkins. I I think that it's hard to be deceitful when you're carrying a child in this way. And I think that's beautiful. So, and of course, when this child gets too big to carry, it's time to get a new one. Just
Thanks. That's noted. She's trying to respond there, but thank you very much.
Is there another question? Because I've got another answer. I'd like to use it. Well, we
Jeff has a question.
Oh, sorry.
All right. So is it common courtesy to wear masks on video calls?
It depends if you're standing for federal presidential office or not. I'm trying to virtue signal, but I think generally speaking, if you're in your own environment, it's a wonderful opportunity to allow the expression from your face to go forth. I don't see anybody wearing a mask here, and I'm pleased to be able to see people's full expression.
Well, that's because the infection rates aren't very high in Australia.
Yes, it's remarkable. We'll have to change our view of Australia as a holiday destination, or even a wedding destination, or destination to do executive development programs. Perhaps Australia, and even more importantly, New Zealand, are going to be frequent destinations for us. So I was talking about values, and if you can show your values in a job interview, or even talk about values, that is important. You may not think that that's practical, but it is, because a lot of organizations have come into trouble because they were not thinking about values. They were only thinking about very short-term financial goals for themselves in terms of some incentive or bonus, or for their organization. And so values, once you know what your values are, remember, some religious organizations have had the same set of values for millennia. So you don't need to fish too far from your own pond to come across some values that coincide with your organization. And all things being equal, you may not even need to have that managerial retreat. But your vision, your long-term goals, organizational unit goals, that's important to bear in mind. And when you're job interviewing, know what your organization, your target organization's values and vision are. And maybe even you'll be able to find out what their mission is, how are they going to achieve their vision. And it may be less clear what their particular strategy is, because if you know an organization's strategy, a competitor can easily develop a strategy that acquires their target market. So that would be something, because if you focus too much on the nitty-gritty, what are you going to do on Monday morning in your first day in the job? Everyone knows that products and services change, that organizational charts change, even that legislation changes. So if you're too practical and too specific, you will be seen to be kind of immature and undergraduate. But on the other hand, if you're too philosophical and too big picture, then people will think you're kind of ivory tower, pie in the sky. So you have to pitch yourself right. Maybe just have a checklist and use words like values, vision, mission, strategy, and other words like, pragmatism, practicality, my daily workflow, my productivity. Remember, productivity is the quotient of output over input. So there's only two ways you can be more productive. That is, for the same input as your predecessor in your role, you have more output, or for the same output as your predecessor, you'd require less input and can do other stuff. Is that clear? Yeah.
There are a few questions that have come in, Ivy and Duff. Maybe if you want to turn on your mic and ask a question.
Ivy?
Yeah. So what is your advice for this? Currently it's difficult seeking a job. What's your advice for young graduates or young professionals on how do we stay relevant in this current climate? There's so many online courses and so many emphasis on emotional intelligence, but all these are not objective and measurable. So what are the kind of online courses that you would recommend to stay relevant?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say I love your name because Harvard is in the Ivy League, and I can see that you clearly are as well. What I was saying was to try and get an inexpensive, and who knows, there may even be free programs out there in something to do with technology, the way people are communicating technologically now, right? Something about Microsoft Teams, something about Zoom. It might take you only 5 days, yeah? Take you a month, you might do, a day a week for a month, and you've got your credential, just to show that you're doing something this year that's up to date. Up to date. Emotional intelligence, is very important, but organizations, and I sensed in your question you understood this. Organizations are cautious about spending too much time in personal development when they are scrabbling to stay alive themselves. So yeah, young people are always relevant. That's not such a big deal. Not suggesting that you retrain. If you're an engineer, fantastic. If you're a marketer, fantastic. If you're a finance person, fantastic. But you just add on to it something that has 2020 in it. It would be a worthwhile thing to do. Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about systems thinking, which is based on thinking systems, and thinking systems which are based on systems thinking. We've talked a bit about input, throughput, and output, and the outcomes from the output. Let's talk for a moment about idea generation or ideation. Often an idea begins with a precept, can be enhanced into a concept, ameliorated into a model, and that model can be represented as a template. Say initially a two-dimensional template with two axes, X and Y, and then a third dimension, Z-axis, can be added so that it's a three-dimensional Rubik's Cube, dash-like representation of the same. And then the idea can be pushed out the other side of this cube into I suppose it's a rubric rather than a Rubik. So the shifted paradigm that has become the idea can be, I suppose, measured both qualitatively and quantitatively against the plethora of hierarchies and aggregation of continua. And
Doctor, just to stop you there for one moment, there has been a few more questions coming in. Sean, do you wanted to ask your question? And Ella first.
Yeah, Professor, I'd like to ask a question, just circling back to interviews and conducting meetings and all that stuff. Do you usually stand up or sit down? Does that really matter with how you think? Do you prefer to stand up and facilitate your thoughts and speak that way, or does sitting down help?
I think standing up has a lot to offer. Standing meetings are not new. Standing desks are not new. A standing meeting has the attraction of usually being very short. you get people seated, hard to get them unseated. Standing up when you're having a meeting, a Zoom meeting or Microsoft Teams meeting, frees the body and the air passages, and you can just be more energetic. It also uses up more energy. So, you know, if you're stuck inside and it's snowing, is it snowing in Australia at the moment? Oh, okay.
No, it's quite hot. And perhaps we can move on to, I know we're running short on time, so maybe we'll move on to...
No worries. Thank you very much, Professor. I mean, currently doing an MBA outside Harvard, so I think we might have to take on your point about whether Harvard's the best business school in the world. But, you know, many of us end up in consulting, and I was very much motivated to go to consulting. It seemed like a great lifestyle, you know, get to fly around, get status on points and airlines. But it seems that during COVID times, that might have to take a break, and I won't really be able to reach that. So thinking of other motivations to join consulting and to excel, I'm wondering if, like, from your experience, what drove you into consulting and why did you choose to leave?
Wow, that's a good question. Can I ask where you're doing your MBA?
The better school.
Which one? I'm so sorry.
No, I'm studying at INSEAD.
Oh, at INSEAD. Oh, it's in Fontainebleau, yeah?
Actually, I'm in Asia. I'm in Singapore.
Oh.
Otherwise, it'd be a bit of an ungodly hour for me.
Well, INSEAD is an absolutely marvelous school, and we have kind of a revolving door of, as you'll see from your handbook from INSEAD, of faculty from Harvard to INSEAD and from INSEAD to Harvard. What do I think of consulting? It depends what stage of life you are at. If you have a life partner, if you have children, then consulting is not for you, unless you are prepared to spend a lot of money on divorce and alimony and child support. So it's a stage of life thing. I think of management consulting as an extension of childhood. And I myself had an unhappy childhood, but I had a long one. So the 14 years I had at McKinsey was part of my childhood. And when I grew up, I became an academic. If you want a rounded lifestyle and if you want to be a real grown-up and have some deep relationships outside of your work, then I would advise against management consulting. Also, management consultants often are not involved in the implementation of their recommendations, and therefore they see a very narrow view of the world. So the irony is that the more life experience and the more work experience you have, the better you would be as a management consultant. But by the time you have that experience, you will most likely have a family and be precluded from pursuing that course. I think it's better to work in an industry and in an organization that gives you a chance to grow. A huge organization has lots of advantages. It could be a huge government department, or it could be a multinational organization. You can get jobs as a management consultant within these huge organizations, to be an internal consultant. That way you get the best of both worlds. And you can be well paid also. Our Master of Ceremonies is with IBM. I'm sure there are internal management consultants at IBM, yeah?
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, so that's one example. Now, Miguel, this is a strongly prejudiced viewpoint. You might need to ask 10 people to get a balanced viewpoint. But the question to ask is, what is the divorce rate amongst management consultants versus the rest of society? So I don't know your personal circumstances, and that's not relevant. I'm talking generally. But with a degree from INSEAD, you could go anywhere, of course. I don't know. Management consulting is not a I don't know. I've got really conflicted views about management consulting.
Thanks, Doctor. Let's move on to Jeff. He had one question.
All right, thank you, Tharinda. So I've got a curly one for you, Professor Harry.
No calls.
So what happens if you find yourself interviewing a Harvard Business School professor and then he just rambles on with a lot of bullshit?
Well, it depends if the bullshit is artistic or not, and then he would be a bullshit artiste. I myself have a BS, an MS, and a PhD. And
what does that stand for?
Bullshit, more shit, and piled higher and deeper. So sometimes people question my expertise, and they think that I don't know what I'm talking about. I think that's part of the Socratic method. I have to convince them in some way.
Yeah, when we listen to experts according to brain scans, we literally surrender our own judgment. So we end up following these experts, supposed experts, purported experts, blindly. And therein lies the danger, because the guy that you're listening to, the trouble, see, experts sometimes they usually have confidence and charisma. And this guy, Harry ridiculous. How ridiculous. This guy is none of that. And the reason why is because his real name is Rodney Marks. He's Australia's premier corporate comedian. He specializes in doing hoaxes and jokesing and fooling people very much like us by pretending to be an expert when in fact he knows nothing about anything and spends his whole life bullshitting people like us. So that's who he is, really. Rodney Marks, corporate comedian.
And Tharinda, you're the show tonight.
Wait, so this is a setup?
I'm confused.
That was a master. That was a master.
We're setting up Tharinda.
I can say that was a good plan, man. I was like, when the thing started, I was like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
I almost
So sorry.
lost it.
Well done, guys. Well done.
I couldn't help myself. I was cracking up all the way through. I was just trying to hold it in. Sean was like, "Stop laughing! You're giving it away."
No, that was a good one.
Well, you had me fooled. I thought
It's recorded.
No, but like, you know, the biggest clue was like when the whole Eventbrite went FUBA. I was like, no, man, Jeffrey cannot fuck that up that big time.
Oh no, that was actually a food bar. Sorry, that's
Really?
That's awesome.
Oh,
we-
man.
I was wondering how we're going to explain to external people that we're about to pull the biggest prank on Tharinda. But as it turned out, we actually
I'm okay with that.
we actually screwed up on the invite, so that actually solves half my problems.
Man.
And then we can actually focus on the actual. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I learned a lesson here is that trust your judgment, because with no disrespect, Rodney, but I felt you were waffling on a little bit too much, and I actually messaged Tharinda to say, hey, you know, push the questioning along. And deep down in my gut, I thought, I don't know about this guy. But yeah, well, now it turns out to be a prank. So I think the lesson is, trust your gut, trust your experience.
And that's something which Rob was messaging me saying, oh, it's probably he's tired.